this session. We're already 10 minutes into the session, so I'd like to get started. A couple of important announcements, though. Is that better? Sounds okay to me. Those two exits on the side of the auditorium here, do not use them unless the place catches on fire. Those are emergency exits, and they trigger security alarms, and so if you decide you don't like any of the speeches and want to exit, you got to go out there so we all can see you. But do not go out there or it will be a problem. Okay. All right, we do have a full slate of talks. They're very well-known speakers. I hope you know them. I'm going to give them very quick introductions. I'm going to introduce the session very quickly. The ground rules are the speakers are going to speak for about 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to save up questions until the end. And then we have a team of Olympic runners with microphones who will be circulating them in the last few minutes of the session, so that hopefully everybody in the room will get to ask a question or two. As you can see in this massive screen, this is a joint East and 4S production on the basic conference theme of acting with technologies, and innovative ones, of course. And we have interpreted it loosely, and our four speakers, Christine Hine, who will introduce the session, Nellie Youngshorn, Lucy Suchman, and Steve Woolgar will, in different ways, address that theme, and I hope captivate your interest to keep you from using those illegal doors. Okay, so our first speaker is going to be Christine Hine, who of course is the current president of EAST, and she's going to be speaking on an introduction to this session, plus an introduction to some of her own work. As you must know, she's done some very interesting stuff on virtual ethnography, and she'll be talking about acting with innovative technologies. But you have to put quotation marks around innovative.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Right. Well, I've known Mike for a few years now, and it's some years ago that we discovered that we both shared an appreciation of the work of Garrison Keillor, the humorous author. And I remember quite well, we discussed on that occasion the story of the living flag. So it's a kind of typical Garrison Keillor small town, and on some significant occasion for the town, the idea is that the inhabitants of the town will gather together and create a living flag. So what they do, they all dress up in the appropriate colours, in the right proportions to make up the flag, and they turn up on the day and assemble themselves in an array in front of the tallest building in town. And what then ensues is that for some hours, each inhabitant in turn climbs up the tower and gets to look down and see the living flag that's assembled. And I'm kind of put in mind of that now as I'm looking out at this assemblage of STS in all of its diversity and vitality. And I have a kind of suggestion that possibly we could spend the next 2 hours, if each of you in turn would like to pop up here and swap with me, you could kind of get a great idea of the living flag of STS. Maybe not. I kind of seem to remember that in the Garrison Keillor story it doesn't work out too well, something goes wrong as it always does. So instead, an alternative suggestion, I will shortly be handing over to my distinguished colleagues here, and they will address the task of demonstrating STS in all of its diversity and vitality in a slightly different way. But first of all, Mike did invite me to spend a little time introducing the session and the thinking behind it, and he invited me to do that by both exploring the theme and illustrating it a little bit with some of my own research before I hand over to my colleagues. So that's what I will try and do now. So, the title of the session, Acting with Innovative Technologies, performs, as you will notice, a little ironic distancing from its announced objectives. When we started out, Mike and I began our planning with the notion of exploring the conference theme as it's related to the study of some popular objects of concern. And we started out, I think, with the idea that we might look at the self-consciously new information and communication technologies. And subsequently we broadened it out a little from information and communication technologies into the slightly wider and possibly slightly more provocative, innovative technologies. And we invited Nelly Usun, Lucy Suchman and Steve Woolgar to offer their own responses to this theme. From the resulting interpretations that they came back to us with, it became clear that some bracketing of our terms was going to be appropriate and offer a fairer representation of the way that the session was going. And we haggled for a little while over whether we could bear to leave without its own, own set of scare quotes, but restraint prevailed for once. So I'm in a position now where I would like to give you some account of what is to come, but not by reporting the themes around which we planned the session. It's much more that I will be retrofitting some thematic suggestions to prefigure, but certainly not encompass the whole of the presentations which are to come. I'd like to start the thematic retrofit by suggesting that there is a practical politics to acting with innovative technologies that encompasses both ourselves as STS actors and the various communities that are developing and using these technologies. So I'll be illustrating these practical politics with some brief examples from my own research before returning to the broader theme. So, in recent years, I've been looking at the engagement of groups of biologists with the internet and associated information technologies. So, the biologists that I've been studying are systematists who work in, often in museums, institutions like, this is the Natural History Museum in London. The systematists work on classifying and naming living organisms, often by working with the vast collections of preserved specimens of animals and plants and so on that these institutions hold. And the systematics community has had for many years an image problem, has definitely felt itself to have an image problem, amongst other biologists and with the funding bodies as well. So systematists feel that they've been portrayed as old-fashioned, unscientific, overly bound to tradition and to dusty libraries, tending to make trouble by changing the names of familiar groups of organisms for reasons that other biologists maybe don't understand or appreciate. But in recent years, the systematic biologist community has found a place on the global stage. And that has happened thanks to the increasing recognition that biodiversity conservation is a matter of global significance and of political significance. And so the Convention on Biological Diversity, signed in 1992, placed an obligation on the signatory nations to share what information they had available on biodiversity. And so within that context, systematists and the way that they work has become a matter of high-level scrutiny. And the use of information and communication technologies, ICTs, within that context has often been advanced as a potential solution to many of the problems of sharing information and the imbalances in information access that are felt to trouble systematics on a global scale. And this image is my favourite ethnographic object to demonstrate this point. It's a report that was prepared by a House of Lords Select Committee in the UK, examining the state of systematics in Britain at the time. This was 2002. And the significance for me is that each of the yellow post-it notes that are sticking out in that little fringe along the side is an instance where in the report, which is simply broadly assessing the state of systematics, each of those post-it notes is an instance where somebody proposes information and communication technologies as some kind of solution to a problem. And maybe what you can't see is the kind of, you don't get the 3D, you can't see the depth to which those go down through the report as well. So that's my kind of visual index.